Hello and welcome to the RIA Tech Talk podcast brought to you by RIA Workspace. I'm David Kakish and I'm here with Todd DeRoca. Together, we're on a mission to simplify the complex world of technology for RIAs just like yours. The title of today's session is What's the Best CRM for Your RIA and Why? I'm really excited because we have a special guest, Christopher Johnson, and he specializes in this area. And what we're going to talk about today are the different CRMs on the market today that are specific to the to different RIAs, and which would be the best one for your RIA. And here's the deal: I love covering topics like this, and I should put a quick disclaimer: we're not getting paid by Wealthbox or Redtail or Salesforce or anybody else like that. But I love these things because it's a great way to get an objective view. And because, sometimes there is a right CRM for the right type of company and, some nuances and stuff like that. But again, excited to have a special guest with us today. His name is Christopher Johnson. He's the founder of TrigaByte Technologies just outside of the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. He has 30 years of experience in financial services, and he has a boutique consulting firm where he also focuses on the tech. Now, we focus on cybersecurity, IT compliance, help desk managed IT. He focuses on operations. And the analogy I like to use is it's like peanut butter and jelly. We're the peanut butter, here's the jelly, and together we're better together. So without further ado, Chris, I want to welcome you. Feel free to introduce yourself, and we'll kind of get down to business after that.
Yeah, thanks, David. So I appreciate the opportunity to be on the podcast and really looking forward to digging into CRMs and what they can do for financial advisors. Like you said, I've got 30 plus years experience in the business. I really grew up on the operations, technology, and compliance side. Most notably, my role of chief compliance officer and chief operations officer for a large RIA broker dealer in the Twin Cities area. Was there for a long time, and from there jumped out to the client side actually, and ran a wealth management practice for about 6 years prior to forming TrigaByte. And really during that 6 years, started recognizing my passion for technology and what it can do for an advisor and how they serve their clients. And with my background having the ops, technology, compliance, and then client side, I think I have a unique position with experience and knowledge that can really add value to my clients and what they're trying to do and accomplish in using the technology that they have. And really, part of it is I have a Six Sigma background also, so that process improvement, elimination of waste, utilizing your resources and getting more value out of the tools that you already pay for and that you have, in the firm. It's really a good conversation in trying to understand and find additional value in those tools and how they can help the advisor grow and serve their clients. So, and in the end, it's really about what they do for their clients and creating that unique experience. So.
Sounds good. Well, listen, I am really excited because I have a lot of questions. Well, Todd too. I have a lot of questions, and hopefully I'll give Todd an opportunity to ask questions too. And you said you've got 30 years of experience. What do you start working when you're 5? Is that the deal?
Yeah, I was pretty close to that. Yeah, 1989 is when I started in the business. I'm fortunate to have my father's genes in the youthful look. Don't let that fool you. I used to get, when I was younger, even more, more people saying, "Hey, wait, did you just come out of college? How long have you been in the industry?"
Yeah.
When I was in a role of, chief operations officer, chief compliance officer, and people would look at me and go, "Are you sure?" So yeah, it's
all right. Well, I think we'll have a separate podcast on aging,
Yes,
but for now, we'll kind of pull it back in and talk about CRM. So, and by the way, just the listeners know we're not going to talk about every CRM under the sun. We're gonna talk about 6 different ones, and I'll kind of list them alphabetically. AdvisorEngine, Advyzon, Redtail, Salesforce, Tamarack, Wealthbox. Those are kind of the big 6 in this space. And
Yeah.
maybe there are others that Chris, you'll talk about, but from our perspective, a lot of times what we're doing with our clients is like, well, hey, what's the better CRM? And a
Hmm.
lot of times our answer is like, look, this is not our area of
Yeah.
specialty. We're happy to have you talk to another client that's using a certain CRM and why and things like that. But that's kind of why I'm excited, Chris. So the first question at the top of the hour, just a 1 minute question, 1 minute answer, and then we can wrap it up. What's the best one and why?
Yeah, that's a great question. I get that question all the time from my clients. And really the answer is it depends. I mean, there's so many different ways that people do this business and the tools that they use. And it really, the way you drill down into what is the best CRM is, it really depends on who you are as a firm and what you do and how you serve your clients and what features you want and need in order to do that. So, and that's where we get into really deep conversations, with my clients on really who are you and what do you want to be and what do you want to look like and how does that present out to your clients? So I can't give you a specific, one answer, quick answer for that. but that is the question I
It's
get
not
all the
Salesforce. Come
time.
on,
It's not, no, it's not. I mean, if you're a one-person shop and you're paying for Salesforce and you need to customize that, really, do you have the resources and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
your
yeah.
financial stability to do
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Probably not. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I was for the
I
record, I
know.
was being sarcastic with that question. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
out of by the way, really quick, out of the six that I mentioned, are there any
Yeah.
that I missed that we want to add to this, or are we kind
No,
of hit
I
the main
mean,
six?
yeah, I think those are the ones that I come across most
Okay.
often that people are
Yep.
using. You've got some of the other the more captive people. I mean, we could get into, ClientWorks, which is LPL's,
Yeah.
homegrown system. And if we got into oh gosh, now I'm losing their name. Another firm that, does their own, so those
Yeah,
are
yeah.
some of
We're
the
we're
other
talking
ones,
more about
but
the independent. Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And,
we'll
and
focus on that. Yeah.
and even independents that are with LPL don't always just use ClientWorks. They may have their own CRM like Redtail
Yeah.
or Wealthbox or whatever that
Sure.
they use on top of that. So
Okay.
yeah, these are the main six for sure.
Yeah. So which ones do you have experience working with, or do you have a background in? I'm curious, and then we'll kind
Yeah,
of maybe go into more specific questions from there.
sure, absolutely. So, lots of experience in Redtail, lots of experience in Tamarack, lots of experience in Salesforce. Wealthbox a little bit. Advyzon, not a whole lot. I really haven't come, at least my clients that are using a lot of Advyzon, and then AdvisorEngines, lots of experience in that too. In fact, that's the old Juncture and the firm that I was chief operations officer for, we actually used Juncture back in the day when it was, Juncture and an in-house database
Yeah.
solution. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I forgot. Yeah, Juncture. That's right. They were they,
Juncture.
they were the dominant one for quite a
They
while.
were
It's funny.
absolutely, yeah, yeah.
Totally
And,
forgot about
back
that.
then that was best of breed,
Yeah,
and everybody was going best of breed, and you didn't have the integrations that you did today, and you had all these silos out there, your CRM, your financial planning tool, your trading tool, and all of these now are really pulling things together and really trying to be that one-stop shop of here's where I go to do my daily business, right? And I think advisors, that's what they're looking for.
sure. So out of the ones that I mentioned, right? Because there's quote unquote larger RIAs and there's smaller
Hmm.
RIAs, and I kind of say
Yeah,
that with a grain of salt, but depending on the size of the RIA, and generally it's kind of funny a lot of times, and I don't know if you do the same way or not, but when we look at a size of an RIA, right, they all like to compare AUM, and
absolutely.
that's a metric, and that's an important metric,
Sure.
assets under management. But
Yeah.
we tend to look, I'm like, well, the number of employees, right? Because
People.
that's,
Yeah,
yeah, the number of full-time employees that they have.
absolutely.
That's a key
Yeah,
metric for us, regardless of AUM. And so that's kind of, when we say a larger RIA versus smaller RIA, I'm curious, do you kind of look at it the same way? Is that how you look at it?
absolutely.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Because, it's about process and how many people are involved in that process when you're using these tools.
yeah,
And if you have one person that does everything, a really simplified solution is the way to go. If you have multiple people that are involved in a process, you need a system that can handle, that workflow and being able to automate the passing of tasks and things that need to be
Okay,
done. So
cool.
yeah, absolutely. Number of people is a big part of determining what system, fits you best.
Yeah. So vaguely speaking, what's your definition of a smaller RIA in terms of headcount, and what are the CRMs that you typically see, in
Yeah, so I really kind of look at 10 and under, and I think Redtail is the predominant one that is for the smaller independent, maybe they're an advisor out doing their own thing, one, two, three people, and maybe they're their own RIA,
Sure.
but yeah, Redtail's really the predominant for, that space. And then as you get upwards into, the 20 plus, you're looking at AdvisorEngine, Salesforce, and when you've got really large enterprises, Salesforce is the predominant one for those larger when you start getting into 50, 100 people,
Yeah.
because of the complexity of the business and how many people are involved in what happens every day.
Yeah, I generically say that kind of our sweet spot is like 5 to 25 employees, the
Hmm.
RIAs we work with.
Yep.
And what's funny with these RIAs, once they hit like 20, 25, 30 employees, the big question is, hey, how do we increase AUM without increasing headcount, right? That's kind of what
Absolutely.
they're all trying to
Yeah,
tackle that. And that's where we see a lot of that. It's kind of interesting. I mean, I think Wealthbox has also been making some inroads.
they have.
A
Absolutely.
lot lately. And I
Yep.
think if I'm not mistaken, they've been taking some market share away from Redtail in that space.
They are. I think
It's
I
really
think they just
interesting.
hit like how many client oh I remember seeing kind of the them kind of promoting them hitting 1,000 clients or something, or 1,500 clients, or but yeah, Wealthbox is definitely
Yeah.
taking market share from Redtail.
Yeah.
I specifically don't have any clients that are working with Wealthbox right now.
Sure.
But and I haven't helped anybody move from Redtail to Wealthbox.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm hearing that in the marketplace that Wealthbox
Well,
is
and
really
Wealthbox likes to
making
talk about
strides.
that a lot, obviously.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure.
How about I'm curious, and I don't know if you have good numbers on that or not, but like RIAs with around 10 to 30 employees, what are you
Ooh.
typically seeing the CRMs in that space? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, again, predominantly I'm seeing a lot of Redtail. And you know, there is some Tamarack in there.
Mhm.
The people that are using InvestNet, with that whole, merger that took place a number of years ago, the people are starting to look for that fully integrated platform that really does everything for them. And Tamarack is one of those. It's
Yeah.
interesting, Tamarack, way back when it was portfolio management or trading, rebalancing. The firm that I was at, we started using Tamarack, and I was actually on their advisor board that helped them develop the CRM component and that
Okay.
integration piece. Yeah,
Yeah.
way
Okay.
back, when Stuart DePina was there and Andina Anderson, and that
Yeah,
initial
I don't recognize
Tamarack.
the names, but yeah.
Yeah. So wait,
I'm
that I
not I'm
mean,
not that old, Chris.
we're talking back in the early to mid 2000s. So yeah.
I'm kidding. I think we're about
that
the same age.
that's why I don't have much hair on top. And I don't know if people can't see that, but I like to say I'm follically challenged because of my age.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting in that 10 to 30. I think Redtail is really big. I think Tamarack is really
Yeah.
big. And then depending on
Yeah.
the type of company, I sometimes see Salesforce if they're
Salesforce.
doing like
Yeah, that's the other one.
customization and stuff like
Yeah,
that. Yeah, those are kind of
absolutely.
all right. Well, I'll tell you what. Thank you. My big question was like, hey, what are you seeing the smaller versus larger versus mid-size,
Yeah,
RIA? I guess I'll kind of just open the floor for you. Start, maybe we can take them one at a time in whatever order you want,
sure.
and kind of dissect that and talk about, the pros and the cons and kind
Okay.
of go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's kind of maybe that's a good way to do that if you don't mind.
Okay. So, I mean, if we start kind of, A to Z AdvisorEngine, they're promoting their complete wealth management platform, right? They've got all of these different technologies that are part of the system. Their challenge has been they had to re-engineer their whole platform from an in-house, server-based model to a web-based model, as everybody
And
was
by the way,
going to the
this is
cloud.
what people knew for many years as Juncture, right?
Juncture,
AdvisorEngine.
exactly.
That's
Yeah,
what Juncture was.
Juncture.
And what you're
Yeah,
saying, it was built server based or desktop based, and then
desktop
they
based.
had to
Yeah,
figure
you
out how
had
to have it cloud. That's kind of okay. Okay.
absolutely. There was a desktop installation. You had to have your own, I think it was a SQL server back then, to run the database. And it was really it had a footprint in the firm, right? And lots of support needs from supporting the database and the server that ran the database. And as everybody started going to the cloud, everything for Juncture was, so hardware based that they had to re-engineer their whole platform. And so I think they're getting there. They have a lot of different things that they can do. The CRM has contact management, practice management, dashboards, admin tools. They've got their digital onboarding and client portals. So they really have a lot that they can do, portfolio management, so all their data consolidation and rebalancing and reporting and fee billing, and then the planning side. I think where AdvisorEngine is light on is the integration. The planning tool is their in-house planning tool. I mean, they use, I think, Franklin to help with their models. Or maybe it's their goals-based planning that they use Franklin template for. But they, a lot of their stuff is more built in the system, whereas a Redtail has integrations, right? They do more integration of data versus building out things themselves.
Yeah.
So, AdvisorEngine's great for as you get, to be a little bigger. That's where I see it. I have one client that's on AdvisorEngine, and they, they're a larger firm. They're in the 30-ish range of people, and growing. So, I think their AdvisorEngine opportunity is really to go for those larger firms that really want some digital workflow stuff,
Yeah.
because their digital onboarding is really nice. But they're kind of light on portfolio management. I mean, this specific client uses Black Diamond for their portfolio management. They don't even use AdvisorEngine for that piece because it's kind of light. It doesn't
Sure.
have the complex reporting things that Black Diamond does. So, Advyzon, I don't know that much
So
about that because yeah,
real quick,
absolutely.
Chris,
Yep.
before we move on. So one thing with AdvisorEngine, and for the people that know it under Juncture, right? They actually had a
Yep.
lot of market share. And I think
They
one of the
did.
big challenges of Juncture is, they're and I know this because I have an interesting story. They built so much of their stuff with, like, what I would call legacy on-site server, that it was
Yes.
really a challenge for them to move to the Juncture
To
cloud.
migrate. Yeah,
Yeah, and it was just
absolutely.
like, it's like a legacy software that now you're trying to build in the cloud, whereas some of the other competitors, like think Salesforce, for example, right? It was
Yeah.
always originally a cloud-based
Cloud
application.
based.
Yeah,
Yep.
and what's funny is we were thinking about the cloud. I think way before Juncture was, that we even got the domain name juncturecloud.com. We had that
Did you?
domain name,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we had a
Nice.
bunch of other something cloud.com, but
Sure.
um legally you can't keep a brand's name, right? So we actually
Right.
gave it to Juncture. We transferred all
Yep.
that stuff to Juncture during those days. And that's why I kind of have a funny story, behind that. And I just wanted to share that.
Yeah.
You could have
So
charged a lot for that,
You could
David. Man,
have.
I would have I would have been
Don't.
like
no,
10
no.
grand.
Todd, yes and no. You can't use somebody's brand, right?
Right.
And do that. But if it was like a
Mhm.
generic name, like,
Generic. Yeah.
x.com, like,
Yeah.
Twitter, yes, you could have gotten a lot, but I can't go in and say NikeCloud.com, right? Actually, so
Right.
we transferred all that. We didn't take
Yeah.
Or if we did take money, it was just something like nominal or, whatever.
Yeah.
So
I
Yeah,
believe
pay us
this
the
happened to
transfer fee.
Salesforce too. They forgot to like re-up their domain name and somebody
Yeah,
bought
someone
it.
bought it. Yeah.
So,
Yep.
are you
yeah.
serious?
Oh
Salesforce.
yeah.
Oh
But
my
I think
goodness.
obviously Salesforce being Salesforce took care of that real fast. But
Yeah,
yeah,
you've got all
it's
the trademark stuff that comes into play with that, right? I'm
Yeah.
sure all these companies are trademarked and you can't use trademark names,
Yeah. All
like
right.
that or buy domains to
Yeah.
to
Cool.
to
So
then
just a little,
yeah,
I wanted to make, this stuff can sometimes be dry. So I wanted to make it a little bit entertaining. So Advisor
absolutely.
Engine, what used to be known as Juncture, we talked about that. Fantastic. Thank you. And you were going to
Yep.
start to talk about Advyzon.
Yeah, so Advyzon, I don't know a whole lot about them because I haven't really come in contact with clients that are using them. What I know is, they're trying to be, again, that one-stop shop where you've got portfolio management and client reporting, CRM, billing, rebalancing, all of those things. So kind of a, InvestNet type thing, a TAMP. I think they've got a TAMP piece of the business and so I don't have a lot to say other
Sure.
than I hear that people, I think they're becoming more noticed in the industry they're, because I think they're modern, right? Their interface looks modern, their reports look modern, they've got a document management component of it. So, if you're a firm looking for a one-stop shop, I definitely think there's someone to look at and really to do a comparison of what your needs are to
Yeah.
see if they fit. And
Yeah.
and I think they can help the larger firms because of that, fully integrated,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
setup.
what's your take? And this is a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's an important question to ask. What's your take on, best of breed and then like a one-stop shop, right? Where it's sort of
Oh yeah.
everything. Now, generally speaking, the smaller you are, it's better to have a Swiss Army knife, right? But the
Yes.
bigger you are, you want to have maybe, separate. But I'm
Separate.
curious, what are your thoughts on that? Because that's a question that even transcends the RIA world, but we're going to focus on RIAs.
Absolutely. No, and I get that question a lot. And again, I come back to what are your needs? And really the needs of my clients. What do you need? How do we pull them together? And I think you and I passed the little emails that we were trying to look for companies that maybe could build data warehousing behind these systems that can help some of the integration components that maybe aren't there. And that's something that I think when you look at Advyzon and you look at Tamarack, InvestNet type, they're this big, integration piece that has the one-stop shop. Well, that costs a lot of money usually, right? And you don't have a lot of flexibility with those because they're built and you use them and you've got your lists and things that you can create in the system for how you code a client and what their status is with you and segmentation and those kinds of
Sure.
things. But you're kind of stuck with what they have, whereas something like a Salesforce, you can buy Salesforce and then you can build all around it and integrate and do whatever you want with it. In fact, one of the firms when I was in the wealth management practice, we were partnered or aligned with, the RIA side was a large RIA that used Salesforce and had put a ton of money into it and customized it and built custom integrations with the financial planning tools
Yeah.
and all kinds of stuff that then made it a very wow experience. Well, that's very expensive to do. So,
Yeah.
yeah, your smaller firms, usually from a cost standpoint, that one-stop shop, you buy the one license and you get their
You're covered
pieces.
across the board. Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
covered. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, the way I see it is if I were an RIA with 5 employees, I'd probably be
Yeah.
looking sort of an all-in-one. If I had 30
Absolutely.
employees, there's probably nuances where I'm like, no,
Yes.
I may want to customize, Salesforce or Redtail or, whatever
Absolutely.
that is,
Yeah,
So,
that that
okay.
that that's what I generally see across my
Okay.
client base
Cool.
is yeah, the smaller ones are one-stop shop because they want it easy,
Yep.
integration, not a lot of problems with trying to figure out, well, here's my planning data, here's my CRM data. How
Yeah.
do I pull those together? Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Advyzon, we talked about that. Okay.
Yep.
Redtail. Redtail is kind of the big one in the SMB space, I guess, if we want to
It
call it that,
it is, yeah, it is, and Redtail's been great. They merged with Orion, not too long ago, so I think that's helped. Redtail for a long time was having a lot of service challenges and some, challenges with database connection and things like that. And I think they're really resolving a lot of that with the partnership with Orion. I think Orion's looking to, you know, when you look at InvestNet versus Orion, Orion's trying to be InvestNet, I think, and with bringing in a CRM and some of those components and really trying to compete in that marketplace. Redtail's definitely been one of those main components that people have used. Most of my clients are on Redtail, not that I've recommended it. It's something that they've had. And so I have a lot of experience. And actually in the wealth management practice that I ran, we used Redtail for the first part of that business initially when we were with a different RIA than the one that used Salesforce. So I have a ton of experience in Redtail in building workflows and helping people actually migrate data in to it. One of my clients, started their own RIA about a year and a half ago, and they were on their RIA's Redtail database. And so we had to, set up their own Redtail. And so we had to do a migration of all that data. And
Yep.
So, the features are great. They've got imaging, they've got Redtail Speak, you can use their email. So, they had a lot of options, and I think they have like over 100 integrations that you can connect to Redtail. So
yeah, and we see a lot of Redtail, right? Like in the sub, 30 employee. If you're an RIA with under 30 employees, I think Redtail has a really big market share, and for good reasons, right? Like for good reasons. And generally, people that are using it are fairly happy and not looking to move away from it. So
absolutely,
that's kind of been my experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Christopher, a question here. When you talked about migration, is there, out of the 6 that you're talking about, is Redtail one of the more, I guess, simplistic ones to do that migration? Like it's not a big pain in the neck, or is it, is there one that maybe is like really smooth and easy that, if somebody was trying to switch or migrate, they should look at first?
Yeah, migration, data migrations are always like playing craps. You're rolling the dice because garbage in, garbage out. The current database may be full of bad data, and when you bring that over to a new database, it's still bad data. So I spend a lot of time with my clients in doing a data migration, in cleaning up the existing database so that it's accurate, it's complete, it has all the information that you need so that you can make that transition, really easy into the new database. All of these vendors have, onboarding solutions and data migration solutions that are part of that process when you buy their product. And, I don't think there's one that's better than another. I think it really comes back to how good your data is. And if you have a lot of complexity in that data, then you can run into a lot of challenges. So I'll use an example. Redtail has very limited amounts of fields that you can customize, whereas Salesforce has a lot of customization that you can build into it, right? So if you have a very customized Salesforce database that you're going to move to something that's more, not customizable, you will have challenges with that because, well, where do we put this field? Where do we put that field? So that data mapping becomes, a challenge. And not that you ever see people going from Salesforce to Redtail. It's usually the other way, Redtail to Salesforce. But yeah, that's a great question. It really depends on, where your data's at and how are you going to, migrate that into the current or the new database.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and this is probably a great segue to go from Redtail to Salesforce, because you said something really important. We have a lot of people that are using Redtail, And I don't know if I were to liken it to cars, I feel like it's, I don't know, a Honda Accord, very reliable, works really well.
Yeah.
Not a lot of thrills, but I don't know, maybe you
No.
want to upgrade to a BMW or a Mercedes or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think Redtail just, it does a lot of what you need. And
Yes.
again, I'm talking like in the sub 30 employees, right? RIAs with
Absolutely.
under 30 employees. But you're right. When they're trying to do a lot of customization, it can become a
Yes.
challenge, and then people start looking at Salesforce. So that's probably a good
Correct.
time for you to start talking about Salesforce.
Yeah, so Salesforce is a beast, right? I mean, they serve, they're multi-industry in who they serve, whereas Redtail was built for financial advisors, right? You don't see a lot of real estate people using Redtail, right? Why would they go to a system that's made for financial planners and investment advisor type people? Whereas Salesforce is a CRM, period. They have a financial services module, right? That's more geared and built towards financial planners and investment managers. But yeah, when you buy into Salesforce, you go into it knowing you're going to have a ton of resources that go into database setup and how you use it and ongoing support and maintenance for that, because there's so much that you can do with it. In fact, the clients that I've worked with that have Salesforce usually have their own Salesforce, certified people that have, some of the different certifications that you can get from Salesforce in-house, so they can do that work on their own versus having to pay an outside consultant to do that, the customization and some of the it's almost like coding, right? It's not necessarily coding, but it's almost like coding, where you have to build out this module, or you have to enhance this reporting feature, or do these various things. So yeah, Salesforce is a big behemoth. And if you have the resources to do it, and it's really a great tool because you can really make it your own. And the firm that I was working with, that's what they did. We had e-money integrations that aligned with the Riskalyze score. And, it was just this cool platform, and they had this whole process of how people identified who they are as people. So we got really deep into who a person is, and then aligning their investments and their goals and their plans for the future with their money. And it was really cool. But I think I heard they put 25-30 million into that. And that's a lot of money and resources, and the smaller firms just don't have that.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, if I were a 5-person RIA, I wouldn't look at Salesforce. I would look at Redtail. But if I were a 30-person RIA and I need to get some of that customization that I'm just not getting in Redtail, that's where you start looking at it and saying, okay, you know what, Salesforce begins to make sense. But with that, it's like you almost have to have like a part-time Salesforce developer, or even maybe a full-time, or a company that knows that really well for you. So
absolutely.
it's kind of, it's that, to back to your question, one is not better than the other. It's, what are you trying to do,
Yeah, because Redtail, you can do it yourself. You go into the database lists and you can customize your status, right? Or you can customize your keywords, or, these other things that are list oriented that allow you to query the database. How many clients do I have that golf? Well, I'm doing a golf outing. So now I send out a blast email using that data to invite them to a golf event. Whereas Salesforce, I mean, you can customize anything.
It's
really
a double-edged sword,
anything.
right?
It is, absolutely. Well, because if something goes wrong, right, how do you fix it? When you've got that level of stuff, how do you fix it? Redtail, you go to Redtail and say, hey, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
If you've built out your own Salesforce, now you have to figure out, or the company you're using has to figure out, how do we fix this?
So cool. Well, listen, we got 2 more left, Tamarack and Wealthbox. And so Tamarack, if you weren't in this industry, you would think it's a spice or something like that, right?
Absolutely. So I think Tamarack's great. Tamarack's built on Microsoft Dynamics, right? And so if you're a Microsoft shop, the integration of Dynamics to all of your other Microsoft suite products is fantastic. And there's a lot you can do with it, especially now with Copilot and all of the AI stuff that's coming out. Talk about, creating some automation in what you do. It's a great platform for that, along with, again, they were a wealth management practice that basically initially built the system, and they started with rebalancing, which was, portfolio management type stuff. And then they expanded out to CRM and, compliance and all the other components. And so if you're looking for a one-stop shop, Tamarack is one of the ones you should be looking at. Now, expensive, right? So when you compare Redtail or Advyzon or Wealthbox to Tamarack from an expense standpoint, you're going to be paying a lot more for that development and money that they've put into building the system. But yeah, it's, if you're a larger shop that's looking for a one-stop shop and can afford it, Tamarack is definitely one to look at because of all the pieces that they have.
Yeah. And when you say large, again, just to go back for the listener, when you say a larger size RIA, employee headcount, what range would you
Yeah, you're in that same with like Salesforce, 30 plus, I think.
30 plus, okay.
Yeah, I mean, smaller firms can do it, but it's expensive. You have to be willing to make that investment, which, smaller firms can do. But, I think, when you look at scalability and cost and all of that,
Sure.
Your people and your technology are usually your two biggest, costs, right, in your P&L. And if you've got a large chunk of that going towards Tamarack, which is, again, it can be a one-stop shop with everything, you can look at that and go, yeah, maybe I can afford that as a smaller shop. But I personally, I think it's geared towards that larger market.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Cool. And then the last one on our list is Wealthbox. And again, to be fair, we did this in order of alpha, we did it alphabetically, right? It's not like market share or anything like that. It's alphabetically. So the CRM number 6 on our list is Wealthbox.
Yeah. So Wealthbox, again, I don't have any clients directly using this. I've come across it where people have asked me to look at like an analysis and comparison of them versus like Redtail. I think the two of them are the two that kind of most closely match each other in what they can do. But from what I hear, I think Wealthbox is another great solution for those independent breakaway people that maybe are starting their own RIA, and from a cost standpoint, it's comparable to the Redtail side. Yeah. And so I think it's a great one to look at if you're going to compare and you're a small firm. Redtail, Wealthbox for sure are two that you should be looking at.
Yeah, and it's exactly what I was going to say. I think Redtail and Wealthbox in that, SMB space, right?
Yeah.
The, small to mid-size RIA, they kind of compete. I think Redtail's kind of like the well-known established one. And I feel like Wealthbox is really kind of chipping away at Redtail. And then every time they do, they like to brag about it, right?
Yes,
rightfully so, because that's their business, and so yeah. So all right.
Well, and I just want to make one other point on those. I see a lot of these solutions they may not be their own RIA, but they're an independent office that maybe is aligned with a larger RIA. And they have, so I'll use like Cambridge Investments as an example. They're a large broker-dealer RIA, right? But all of their advisors are independent. So you come into a firm like that and they say, here's the options that you have from a CRM that integrate with our in-house systems or things that we use. Wealthbox, Redtail, all of those are part of that. So these smaller independent, may not be their own RIAs, but advisor offices are candidates for products like that for sure.
Yep. Yeah. And again, I just want to go on the record and say, Todd and Chris, which one of these partners or vendors is paying CRM vendors is paying us the most?
All of them.
Zero. They're the same. They're all the same.
I just want to put that out there.
Nobody's paying us.
And nobody pays us. I get zero for any of those partners. They're not. Yeah.
I know. I just wanted to put that out there because we're truly agnostic, and that, and that's kind of why we talk about that. And sometimes there's a ton of value, right, in talking with you, Chris, where we're like,
Yeah.
hey, listen, what's the deal? And I know. I mean, I know the space pretty well, but I got a lot of really great insights today. Let me ask you a couple of follow-up questions. And again,
Yeah.
thank you. Like what you shared was very helpful.
Right.
If you are running your own RIA firm with, 5 employees. Let's just kind of
Yeah.
stay there, right?
Yeah.
Which CRM would you use and why?
Well, I would, honestly, I would either use Redtail or Wealthbox. And
Okay.
again, I don't know enough about Wealthbox, but from what I hear, they would be ones that I would look at.
Okay.
Redtail for me right now, just because I have so much experience in it and I know the system, you kind of go to things that are easy and that
Mhm.
right? That's
Yeah.
how natural you kind of lean to those things. Redtail's great, but again, it's turning into a big company. Orion's now owns it, so who knows where that's going to go.
Sure.
But between I think Redtail and Wealthbox, those would be the two that I would focus on, looking at for
Okay.
my own shop.
I have one last interesting question, and I'll turn it
Yep.
over to Todd to see if he has any questions. But and this question isn't really a fair question, but which ones do you get the most
Oh,
complaints about? And the reason I ask
ooh.
that is you got to remember if somebody's not using something, nobody complains about it, right? And I'm curious, which ones do you get the most complaints about? Or people just like maybe have a hate relationship? And I don't know, maybe hate's a strong word, but you know what?
Sure.
Yeah. Which ones do you get a lot of complaints about? And why?
Redtail.
Okay.
Redtail. Yeah. I mean, because a lot of my clients use it and they've gone through this evolution of
Okay.
being their own company, trying to develop things on their own to Orion taking them over,
Yeah.
through the pandemic, from a service standpoint, companies were really struggling with supporting service. And I mean, you could be on hold with Redtail back then for 45 minutes to an hour.
I remember that they went through a
Yeah,
difficult, a
they
painful
did.
support experience for a while. I think they fixed that
Absolutely.
though, right?
They have. No,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. And my comments are just inexperience and knowing
Yeah,
it's not disparaging against them or anything like
yeah,
that.
of course,
It's
yeah,
just knowing, I mean, everybody goes through challenges in their business, right? We all do. Nobody's perfect and
yeah,
stuff happens. It's really how you come out of it and really what you do to support your clients.
yeah,
And that's where, when we're talking about do we get paid for this? I look at myself as a fiduciary. I grew up in the RIA space, and
yeah,
RIAs, you're a fiduciary to your clients. You do what's in their best interest.
yeah,
And if we were getting paid for this, we wouldn't be doing what's in our best interest for our clients by talking about and recommending
yeah,
and saying these are, ones that I would use. So
yeah.
just, want to
To
put
be
that
to be
out there.
fair, yeah, I just want
Yeah,
to put this out there based on what you said. It's an unfair question because a lot of
it
our
is.
clients use Redtail, right? And
Yeah.
obviously, if you're using something a lot, you're probably going to complain about it just
You get
because.
the
And
good and the bad,
yeah, exactly. So that's
right?
why I said it's an unfair question,
It
but I
is.
always think it's an interesting question. So
Well, so here I will also say though, AdvisorEngine has gotten their knocks too because of their evolution from being that in-house
yeah,
hardware-based, desktop installation to the cloud base. I know they had a lot of challenges with people migrating to that cloud-based solution, and so I think they got a lot of knocks on that too. But
yeah,
I
and
think
yeah,
they're past that.
yeah,
I think from what I understand.
yeah. I won't get too much into it, but when you build, it's a server-based application and a cloud-based
Yeah,
application, they're just
different.
totally different. And I think that
Yeah,
was their chat. Yeah, and I agree with you. I
yeah,
think I think AdvisorEngine is way past that. But when they were going
yeah,
through that process, it was a little bit tough
yeah.
for. It wasn't a seamless transition of. Oh yeah,
No,
let's. It was
yeah,
almost moving to like a different CRM back then. So,
totally. Well, and yeah, and then I mean, you've got InvestNet too. InvestNet's a behemoth, so
yeah,
everybody knows challenges, and when you've got a big company like that, you have service challenges that you go through. So
yeah,
they all do, right? Again,
yeah,
nobody's perfect. I think it's really, you find the solution that best supports your needs, and you figure out how to work, as best as you
yeah.
can with them, and yeah.
Cool. Well, Todd, I want to give you, I don't know if you, I've been asking a lot of the questions, but I wanted to give you an
No,
opportunity to ask Chris any questions on your
no,
end.
I think there's a lot that Chris has said today and some great insights. So I think my only question is, how can somebody get in touch with you, Chris? I mean, what's
Yeah.
the best way?
No, best way is either email or phone. My email is chris@trigabytetech.com. So TrigaByte is just like gigabyte, if you think about it, and then tech.com. Or my phone number is 612-817-7767. And just a little history, TrigaByte, just kind of when you think about TrigaByte, until I started TrigaByte, there was no such thing as a Trigabyte, right? There's gigabyte, terabyte, megabyte, all the bytes, right? And Trig is actually my middle name. So TrigaByte has a very meaningful background as to how I formed the company and where that name came from. So I'm the first Trigabyte in the world. So
Cool.
Nice.
That's a great story, Chris. And by the way, if you're driving, don't feel like you have to, write this down. We're going to include this in the show notes. We'll include Chris's email, and his phone number. And so, yeah, Chris, thank you so much for these. You've shared a lot of really great insights. If you're listening to this and you're saying, wow, this Chris guy really knows his stuff, he does. We just kind of scratched the surface. Chris, this was a lot of fun to geek out on some of this stuff,
thank
right?
you.
Like,
Yes,
like
it
if you're
was.
not in the RIA space, this is so boring, right?
Oh,
But if you're in
totally.
this space, you're like, oh, that's what I wanted to hear. Like, that's what I want to know. I want validation, and I don't want it to be from the vendor, right? Because the vendor is
Right.
always going to promote themselves. And so I
Of
think
course.
this
Yeah.
has been a phenomenal session. I guess before we wrap up, Chris, any final thoughts or insights or words of wisdom you wanted to share with the listener?
Yeah, no, when you say you love geeking out about this stuff, so do I. And a lot of my friends and people that I know and work with just kind of look at me, excuse me, and go, "You're kind of strange because you like really get into this stuff." And advisors don't. They just want to serve their clients, and that's where I can help and add value because I understand what they're trying to accomplish in serving their clients. I understand what their staff goes through on a day-to-day basis, and I love it. And I look for ways that I can add value, and I think my background kind of supports that. So,
Right.
yeah,
Sounds
thank you.
good. Sounds
I
good. Well,
appreciate it.
yeah. Chris, thank you so much. And then Todd, since you've got the wonderful radio voice, maybe you can go ahead and you can sign off for us today.
Of course, of course. Well, as always, guys, thank you so much for listening to the RIA Tech Talk podcast, brought to you by, of course, RIA Workspace. And for more podcasts and resources, go to our website, riaworkspace.com, and check out the Learning Center. That's where all of our episodes and other cool stuff will be at, just for you to research and bookmark. And as always, Dave and I love hearing from you guys, and I'm sure Christopher now would love to hear from you too. So please, reach out to us with any episode ideas or comments, and we always love to see those. And we hope you stay tuned for more RIA Tech insights in our next episode. We'll see you guys later. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.